If someone builds real wealth, it's natural to assume it came from a tech startup, a flashy brand, or a clever niche. Something scalable, something smart, the kind of business people chase online. But when you look at real outcomes, that story keeps falling apart. Many people spend years chasing clever angles, clever branding, and complicated funnels, only to find their income stuck in the same place. The businesses look exciting, but they burn fast. When the trend fades, so does the money. Then you come across a quieter set of numbers. In the Millionaire Next Door, researchers found that about 47% of millionaires built their wealth through owning a business, not startups, not influencer brands, mostly dull, repeatable services people use again and again. That's the part most people skip past. These businesses don't go viral. They don't sound impressive at dinner, but they produce steady cash flow month after month, even when nobody is paying attention. I'm Alex. Today, we'll walk through 6 of these boring business models, the simple filters used to choose one, and why predictability ends up mattering more than potential. That story starts with a friend of mine, Ethan. He picked one of these boring businesses and watched his monthly cash flow quietly pass his 9-to-5 salary, without hype and without anyone noticing at first. Ethan's starting point and early failures. My friend Ethan was not broke in a dramatic way. He had a steady job, worked full-time, and took home about $3,400 a month after taxes. On paper, nothing looked wrong, but his savings sat under $1,000, and his net worth was basically a paid-off hatchback and some furniture that wasn't worth selling. Like a lot of people in their early 30s, he thought the answer was doing something exciting. He tried a dropshipping store that made a few sales and then stalled. He put $1,500 into crypto during a hype cycle and watched it shrink to a few $100s. He even launched a small clothing brand, only to end up with unsold boxes stacked in his hallway. Here's the part most people miss. None of those failed because he was lazy or careless. Heck, they failed because the money never arrived in a predictable way. Some months showed promise. Most months showed nothing. The timeline was always maybe later. Every attempt had the same shape, big energy up front, complicated setups, and no cash landing in his account on a schedule he could rely on. That pattern quietly creates financial stress, even when the losses look small. What finally bothered him wasn't the money he lost. It was the realization that after all that effort, his income still depended entirely on showing up to work every day. And that question, is there another way this could work, is where everything started to change. The idea shift from exciting to dull but reliable. Ethan didn't wake up one day and decided to become boring. The shift started quietly. One night, riding home on a late bus, he came across a summary of the Millionaire Next Door. One line stopped him cold. Most millionaires aren't loud. They're self-employed, and they run what the authors called dull, normal businesses. That idea felt almost insulting. Everything Ethan had tried before was about being clever. New platforms, smart branding, timing trends just right, but this book was pointing in the opposite direction. Repair shops, local services, small operations people rely on week after week. What hit him wasn't the list of businesses, it was the pattern behind them. These owners weren't waiting for a breakout moment. Money showed up whether they felt motivated or not. And customers didn't need convincing. The service was already part of their routine. Ethan started paying attention to real life instead of online hype. The laundromat near his apartment was always busy. Storage units kept filling up. Snack machines emptied themselves during lunch breaks. None of it looked exciting. All of it worked. The idea stopped sounding boring and started sounding stable. So he reframed the question, not what business could explode, but what business keeps getting used even when nobody's talking about it. That small shift would end up doing more for his finances than any clever idea he'd chased before. Boring business number 1. Laundromats. Ethan almost ignored laundromats at first. In his head, they felt outdated. But once he started looking around his own city, the picture changed fast. Apartment-heavy neighborhoods, renters without in-unit machines, families using laundromats for comforters and bulky bedding, even if they owned a washer at home. The demand wasn't optional, it was routine. What mattered wasn't style, it was frequency. People need clean clothes every week. They pay in small amounts, and they come back without reminders, discounts, or ads, chasing them around the internet. He found an older laundromat about 15 minutes from his apartment. The owner was worn out and ready to retire. The place looked frozen in the late 90s, but the numbers were steady. Asking price just under $200,000. Net income after expenses around $4,200 a month. Ethan didn't have that kind of cash, so he structured it the boring way. a modest down payment scraped together by selling his car and tightening expenses. The seller financed the rest over several years in exchange for a quick exit and stable staff. Month 1, as the owner, wasn't impressive. After rent, utilities, soap, labor, and loan payments, he cleared about $1,300, but that $1,300 arrived whether he felt inspired or not. 6 months later, small changes added up. Card readers replaced coins. Prices rose by a few cents. A simple monthly family pass was introduced. Nothing dramatic. Yet net cash flow climbed past $2,000. The machines just kept spinning, quietly proving a point that would matter later. Boring business number 2, vending routes. While upgrading the laundromat, Ethan noticed something he hadn't planned for. The small snack machine by the entrance emptied faster than expected. The same items disappeared first every time. Chips during folding hours. Energy drinks in the late afternoon. Bottled water all day long. That's when it clicked. The laundromat wasn't just a laundry business. It was a waiting business. People stood around with nothing to do and money already in their pockets. Instead of adding more machines, Ethan tested vending the boring way. He bought a used commercial machine from a retiring operator for just over $2,000. No branding, no fancy wraps. He placed it near the door and tracked what sold. The work was dull: drive, refill, count, repeat. But the feedback was instant, and he could see which products moved and which collected dust. That visibility mattered more than theory. Within months, he added 3 more machines. One went into a warehouse break room, one into a quiet office lobby, one into a car repair shop with steady foot traffic. None were glamorous locations. All were predictable. By the 3rd month, the 4 machines together produced just under $2,000 in monthly profit after inventory and fuel. A year later, after removing slow items and relocating one weak machine to a busier gym, the route cleared over $2,400 a month. Now something interesting was happening. Laundry brought people in. Vending monetized the waiting. 2 boring systems started feeding each other, and the combined cash flow began to feel very real. Boring business number 3, self-storage. Self-storage made Ethan uncomfortable at first, and that was the signal. The numbers were bigger, the timelines longer, and the commitment felt more real. But the more he studied it, the more one pattern stood out. People hate letting go of their stuff. Once boxes go into a unit, rent keeps getting paid month after month, often long after the original reason disappears. Instead of buying a large facility outright, Ethan took a quieter path. He partnered with a small contractor who owned unused land behind an industrial park. The contractor knew construction, but wanted nothing to do with tenants, software, or daily operations. Ethan already had systems and cash flow from the laundromat and vending route. They split responsibilities cleanly. Ethan funded about 30% of the build cost and ran everything operational. The contractor handled land and construction. No branding, no billboards, just rows of clean, simple units. The first phase opened with 24 units. By month 9, 18 were filled, each renting for roughly $137 a month. Debt service and shared costs ate a large chunk, but once occupancy stabilized, Ethan's share settled around $1,500 a month. Nothing felt explosive, but that was the point. Storage didn't need weekly attention. Tenants stayed. Payments arrived automatically, and for the first time, Ethan saw income that didn't depend on foot traffic or refills. When he added the numbers together, laundromat, vending, storage, something quietly flipped, and the combined cash flow crossed $6,000 a month. Without changing his lifestyle, he had replaced his paycheck, and that realization set up the next shift in how he thought about business entirely. The cash flow turning point. The moment didn't feel dramatic. Ethan didn't quit his job on the spot or celebrate with anything expensive. He just opened a spreadsheet and noticed a quiet line crossing another. His combined monthly cash flow from the laundromat, vending route, and storage had passed his paycheck. What surprised him most was how unexciting it felt. No single business was carrying the load. The laundromat threw off a couple thousand. Vending added another layer. Storage filled the gap. Together, they created something stable enough to lean on. That's when a deeper pattern became clear. The business type mattered less than the behavior behind it. Each income stream relied on small, repeat payments. Customers didn't debate the purchase. They didn't need persuasion. Clean clothes, snacks, storage space, these weren't wants, and they were defaults. He compared that to his earlier attempts. Dropshipping lived or died on ads. Crypto depended on timing. The clothing brand needed constant attention. One bad month could wipe out momentum. In contrast, these boring businesses had memory. miss a day, and they still worked. Ethan also noticed something subtle. Stress dropped before income felt big. Knowing money would arrive next month changed how he made decisions at work and at home. He stopped chasing every opportunity and started protecting what already worked. That shift set up the next phase. Once he understood the pattern, he could spot it elsewhere, not just in businesses he owned, but in ones quietly building wealth all around him. Boring business number 4. Recurring home services. Once Ethan understood the pattern, he started seeing it everywhere. In homeowner neighborhoods, service trucks followed the same routes week after week. Pest control, lawn care, pool cleaning. None of these businesses were exciting, but they shared one powerful trait. Customers signed up once and stayed. In owner forums, he read, late at night, the numbers kept repeating. One technician, one truck, a fixed route. Imagine 80 homes paying around $60 a month for basic pest control. That's nearly $5,000 in monthly revenue from a single route. Miss a week, and customers complain, not because they're unhappy, but because they expect the service to show up. That expectation is the asset. What made these businesses durable wasn't branding or innovation. It was habit. Bugs come back. Grass keeps growing. Pools need cleaning whether the market is up or down, and most homeowners don't want to think about any of it. Ethan noticed another advantage. These services scale in straight lines, not curves. Add one more route, hire one more technician, repeat the same playbook. Costs stay visible. Revenue stays predictable. Compared to his earlier ventures, nothing depended on timing or attention spikes. There were no launches, no ads burning cash overnight, just schedules, invoices, and recurring payments quietly stacking. Ethan didn't buy a service route yet, but he studied them closely. Because by now, the lesson was obvious. The best businesses weren't the ones people bragged about. They were the ones customers forgot about, right up until the day the service stopped showing up. Boring business number 5. Property management. Property management didn't look like a business at all when Ethan first noticed it. It looked like paperwork, phone calls, late-night maintenance texts. Exactly the kind of work most landlords wanted nothing to do with. That was the opportunity. Small landlords don't struggle because rents are low. They struggle because managing tenants is mentally expensive, collecting rent, scheduling repairs, handling move-ins and move-outs. One broken water heater can ruin a weekend, so they outsource it. The math is simple and steady. A manager charging around $90 per unit each month only needs 50 doors to bring in roughly $4,500 in gross fees. No inventory, no storefront, just systems and follow-through. Scale it to 150 units with a small team, and the income quietly becomes serious. What stood out to Ethan wasn't the revenue alone. It was how sticky the relationships were. Once a landlord hands over management, they rarely switch unless something breaks badly. Tenants change, properties change, the manager stays. This business also revealed a deeper layer. Property managers sit between cash flow and the asset itself. Over time, they gain access to off-market deals, distressed owners, and quiet opportunities that never hit listings. Ethan didn't rush into this one either. But by now, the pattern was unmistakable. The most valuable businesses weren't about owning the flashiest thing. They were about becoming the calm operator everyone else depended on, and paid month after month to keep things running smoothly. Boring business number 6. Local car washes. Car washes are a perfect example of a business that looks ordinary, but behaves differently once you study the math. Not the massive branded tunnels on highways, but small local washes tucked into busy neighborhoods. The kind people pull into without planning. What makes them work is leverage. You invest upfront in bays, brushes, vacuums, and water systems. After that, volume does the heavy lifting. One customer pays $10 or $15, thinks nothing of it, and drives off clean. Multiply that by hundreds of cars a week, and the numbers quietly add up. Ethan didn't own a car wash, but he studied listings closely. One 4-bay wash was priced a little over $300,000, with reported net income around $70,000 a year. No complicated inventory, minimal staffing. Nice, and something most people overlook. The land underneath often becomes as valuable as the business itself. The behavior pattern was familiar by now. Cars get dirty regularly. Weather, seasons, and commuting habits guarantee repeat visits. Customers don't debate the purchase. They don't compare 10 options online. They just pull in when the windshield looks bad enough. What stood out most was resilience. Car washes don't need trends. They don't rely on ads. They benefit from impatience and routine. People want the problem solved now. For Ethan, car washes reinforced the same lesson the other businesses taught. When a service fits naturally into everyday life, cash flow doesn't need excitement to survive. It just needs time and consistency. The three filters behind all boring millionaire businesses. By this point, Ethan stopped thinking in terms of industries and started thinking in filters. Every boring business that worked shared the same three traits, whether the owner realized it or not. The first filter was simple, but rare. Customers pay at least once a month without being chased. Laundromats, storage units, pest control, property management, even vending in the right locations all pass this test. The payment is tied to habit. Clothes get dirty, stuff stays stored, bugs come back, rent is due. Revenue shows up because life keeps happening. The second filter was emotional. The customer's decision is low drama. No family meeting for a $12 car wash. No deep thinking for a $2 snack or a monthly storage unit. The price slides under the emotional radar, which makes income steadier when times feel uncertain. The third filter took longer to appreciate. Over time, the owner can control or own the asset under the cash flow. Washers and dryers, storage units and land, vending machines and routes, management contracts that lead to ownership opportunities. This is where patience quietly turns into leverage. Once Ethan saw these filters, opportunity narrowed instead of expanded. He stopped asking what could go viral. He started asking which boring businesses in his city already passed all three, and which owners were tired enough to sell. That question didn't feel exciting, but it was the first one that consistently led to real numbers. How to apply the boring business approach. This doesn't start with quitting your job or buying a business tomorrow. It starts quietly, one afternoon a week, a simple search for real businesses for sale in your area. Not online stores or automation promises, but places with doors, equipment, customers, and years of history. Look for what people keep paying for without excitement. Laundromats in renter-heavy neighborhoods, small storage lots near apartments or industrial parks, vending routes already serving offices or gyms, service routes where the schedule matters more than the brand. Then slow it down and filter everything. Do customers pay at least monthly? Is the decision low drama? Can you eventually own or control the asset behind the cash flow? If one of those fails, move on without overthinking it. The second step is mental, not financial. Stop dismissing small numbers. $1,300 a month doesn't feel life-changing. Neither does $2,000. But direction matters more than speed. Stacking boring cash flow changes how you make decisions long before it changes your lifestyle. The final test is personal. Can you handle repetition? Can you walk past the same machines, units, or routes every week and still care about small improvements? If that sounds tolerable, even calming, you're already aligned with how quiet wealth is actually built. 6 years from now, people may call the result luck. You'll know it was structure. Key takeaways. What actually built the wealth in this story wasn't intelligence, timing, or bold risk. It was structure. Small businesses that feel boring tend to remove the two things that quietly destroy progress: unpredictability and emotional pressure. When customers pay by habit instead of persuasion, income becomes something you manage, not something you chase. Another shift happens under the surface. Once cash flow arrives on a schedule, stress drops before lifestyle changes. That calm creates better decisions. You stop reaching for fragile opportunities and start protecting what already works. Over time, ownership replaces effort as the main driver. The deeper lesson is this: wealth compounds best in places where attention is low. Boring businesses survive because they fit into everyday life, not trends. And if this way of thinking feels steady rather than exciting, that's usually a sign you're seeing the system clearly. If this perspective helps you notice patterns you hadn't named before, we'll keep pulling on that thread in what comes next.